Hello and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Frank PEREIRA. Well, the Department of Pharmaceuticals has launched an online portal for a 5,000 crore rupees scheme that will support innovation in pharma and medical technology. PRIP, or the Promotion of Research and Innovation in Pharma MedTech Sector, promises to make it easier to submit applications to develop novel technologies in medicine, including medical devices and drugs. While the US and China spend $60 billion and $20 billion on pharmaceutical R&D respectively, India's expenditure is only around $3 billion. PRIP aims to bridge this gap and foster a culture of research and innovation in the pharma and medtech industry. In this edition of Viewpoint, we will analyze India's pharma and medtech R&D plan. Joining me on the program today are Anisha Chandy-Eckardt, Managing Director, HOSMAT Hospitals; Awadhesh Kumar Choudhary, Senior Economic Advisor, Department of Pharmaceuticals; and Ravi Rathod, Joint Coordinator, Association of Indian Medical Device Industry and GM, Involution Healthcare. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Viewpoint. Awadhesh, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and put into perspective the state of, R&D in pharma and the medtech industry in India.
R&D in pharma and medtech sector has been good, but this space has been occupied by generics. So what we have been doing till now, pharma sector has done really well for itself. It is one of the rapidly growing sector for India. We are exporting to almost more than 190 countries. But these all are focused towards generic drugs and not so high-tech medical devices. And we are really good at generics, but that is basically, we have a cost advantage, but not high-tech, innovative drugs side. So if we look at the market, global market, more than 60% of market share in pharma is that of innovative drugs. So essentially growth lies in innovation. So keeping that in view, the department has and the government of India has launched a scheme to nudge and promote industry and academia to take up innovation and research in the area of pharma and medtech. The department has launched a scheme called Scheme for Promotion of Pharma and Medtech Industry, PRIP, under which it is promoting research institutions. Like Department of Pharma has NIPERs, 7 NIPERs, and each at all the 7 NIPERs, we have set up one center of excellence, which would be working on a focused area. Like at NIPER Mohali, we have taken up drugs for antimicrobial, antiviral resistance. At NIPER Ahmedabad, we have taken up medical devices, innovations in medical devices. Similarly, at Guwahati, it is phytopharmaceuticals. At NIPER Kolkata, we are looking at flow chemistry. At NIPER Hajipur, we are looking at biological therapeutics. And at NIPER Hyderabad, we are looking at bulk drug. So we are trying to promote different prioritized segment where COE, Center of Excellence, would be working with industry to promote or come up with new innovative products that will be useful for industry. In addition, we would also be incentivizing industry for identified priority area investment, which includes in the area of new chemical entity, new biological entity, complex generics, biosimilars, medical devices, and other priority areas also. So under this scheme, industry, startup, MSME, everyone will be given some incentive. We are going online very soon and would be asking application very soon from an interested party, and we would be proceeding with this program which are launching soon.
Absolutely. So there is a lot of impetus really as far as R&D is concerned, and this is not just limited to this particular sector. Across the board, the government is trying hard to try and bring in more and more R&D into the country so that each of these sectors can flourish and develop in the right way. Anisha, Chandy, let me bring you into the picture now. R&D, we've been hearing about this, we've been speaking about it for a long time, and like I said, we've started getting some kind of an impetus to this particular space. But what kind of innovation is really desired? What kind of innovation do we need at this point in time?
I think we as a nation need to start looking and thinking out of the box when it comes to R&D and innovations. Up until now, the pharmaceutical industry has been extremely profit-driven and very volume-based. I think that we need to focus more on being patient-centric or value-based. And an example of this would be using what is called a value-based formulary, which is essentially a system where drug coverage and patient costs are determined by how well a drug works, not just its price. An example of this is something that Johnson & Johnson does in the UK, where it offers something called Velcade for multiple myeloma. So because it can be very expensive, Johnson & Johnson kind of offers to forego charges for patients who don't respond to it. And that is a very good example of what we need to do over here. We need to sort of make sure that we're focusing on what the patients need and the patient population rather than being very profit-centric in this industry.
Absolutely. All right. Let me take the points that you're making and what, Awadhesh said in his opening remarks forward with Ravi as well. Ravi, let me bring you into the picture now. Like mentioned earlier in the program, private sector certainly needs some kind of hand-holding. Private sector is not investing enough with regards to R&D and innovation. Majority of the investment is going into generic medicine, really, as far as the pharma and medtech space is concerned. Why is the private sector holding back? What needs to be done?
If you look at the overall domestic market of the medical devices, it is valued currently something around $15 to $16 billion, and we have a great aim to reach $50 billion by 2030. But the paradox is more than 70% of our medical devices are imported. Our sector is actually at a nascent stage, and what we need is, we don't need any subsidies. Basically, what we need is a enabling policy environment and ecosystem to reach that goal. Now, if we talk about on the policy scale, there are two things I would say: a domestic protection of the industry and push for the exports to make a global footprint. Some of the key points are, we need to recognize our own regulatory system, national regulatory authorities, the CDSU, who are actually working tirelessly to ensure the quality and safety of the product. But still, in many of the cases, in many of the public procurement bodies, they prefer foreign certification as a mandatory requirement. That is very demotivating for the sector to even invest in the R&D and go for a new product. There has been some initiatives taken by the CDSU also, for example, the ban on the pre-owned medical equipments. Now, such initiative needs to be encouraged to protect the domestic manufacturers, to encourage them to invest in the manufacturing, to invest in the R&D. Apart from that, I would say Make in India is an excellent initiative, but to differentiate between the Make in India manufacturer, the importers, the labeling requirement of a regulation needs to be aligned with the Department of Pharma's PPO, DPIIT's norms, by clearly mentioning the difference between manufactured by, packaged by, sterilized by, or marketed by. Now, apart from this domestic protection, the kind of hand-holding support the medtech industry needs to make a global footprint. The DOP has recently set up the Medical Devices Export Promotion Council. Now, what we need is, we need to strengthen them and make them a part of all ongoing FTAs. We laid for the export incentives, schemes like RODTAP, those should be raised from 0.34%, 0% to 3 to 4%. And let's come to the startup ecosystem in the medtech. Now, the startup ecosystem, we need to seed and scale up the valley of death, we can say, which is from TRL 6 to 9, where most of the innovation dies. And there, what we need is alignment of these schemes of PRIP to start with the research, then TDV's commercial funding, and the BIREC schemes. So what we need is a public-private partnerships for the validation, clinical adoption, and the certifications. And finally, the infrastructure. As I have said, We don't need subsidies. What we need is a reduction in our capex, enabling policy environment. So the common facilities for the precision prototyping and the validation. So if we truly want to build the medtech, respected medtech ecosystem, which is R&D driven, we need to fix this middle stretch, which is from research to lab. That's
okay.
On the research.
Points well taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward and bring in Awadhesh once again into the picture. We do not want subsidies. We need an enabling ecosystem, an ecosystem that protects domestic manufacturers so that they can make for the world. Would you want to respond to that, Awadhesh? And then we'll also look at PRIP as a whole and how it can enable this.
See, there are already steps taken. There are other departments and ministry which are trying to support the entire value chain of manufacturers. Like ICMR has come up with a MedTech Mitra. It's a portal and a support system where MedTech industry can register. There ICMR is hand-holding them through the valley of death. They are providing them all kind of supports in between. They are guiding them through the process and also supporting them. Similarly, they have also come up with Patent Mitra, which again provides the support for patent. Similarly, PRIP is and other biotech activity also provides incentive and support at level of investment and de-risking the sector. So all these measures will significantly improve and de-risk the sector, improve the returns on the sector and also de-risk the sector. This will definitely be very, very helpful for keen investors and people with good idea. And I do see that, okay, this will take this industry very far. And we are very hopeful that, all the departments are also working together in sync, they are on board. So we think that things will completely, significantly improve and change in favor of industry.
Absolutely. So this is a holistic approach where everyone is involved, the dots are being connected to ensure that the industry as a whole improves. Second part of my question, Awadhesh, about PRIP itself and how it is going to really be a game changer. What's it going to bring to the table? How is it going to help startups and how is it going to help established players in the market as well?
In case of a startup, fund is a significant constraint and capital is also a constraint. So PRIP proposes to provide support for both working capital and capital expenditure. And there is a signal, but these would be essentially milestone driven. If the startup is able to achieve, they have to define their own milestone. The research is divided into transport TRL levels. So basically in TRL levels, you start with initial TRL 1 and journey is from TRL 1 to TRL 9. So the startups typically starts from TRL 1, which is inception level, to TRL 4. So we would be providing support to this segment. A significant number of good startups will be taken up. We then, for the journey to de-risk the market, the next level, which is TRL 5 to TRL 9, for taking the product, which is already at a significantly advanced stage, from lab to market. We also are providing support to industry, which can take this up through clinical research to market. And for that also significant amount of financial incentive would be provided, de-risking the entire process of research from inception to market level, so as to facilitate interested and really good investment to take a shape.
Absolutely. All right. Anisha, let me bring you into the picture once again, at the helm of a renowned hospital and also having the experience of being abroad and seeing how other aspects around the world work as well. How do we foster a culture of research and innovation in the country? That is one. And what are some of the best practices that we can possibly follow here and probably some kind of a model that can be replicated?
I think in order to kind of foster this culture of research and innovation, we need to look at what we do as Indians and how our mindset is. We tend to be very individual focused, especially when it comes to performance and work. And in healthcare, we need to work as a team. It goes from doctors to nurses to administrators to housekeeping. There's a huge group that's always involved from the time a patient enters to the time a patient leaves. And I think we need to bring that mindset into the macro level of healthcare and figure out what we can do to kind of bring in collaboration and innovation into our industry. I think we need to focus on being allowed to take risk, allowed to think out of the box, and really be successful in setting up a framework for this. I think another thing we need to do over here that I've noticed is we need to try and move away from a rote learning kind of mentality where we do a lot of memorization, and we need to move into a lot of critical thinking and creativity and rewarding that and making sure we're incentivizing people to think creatively and think out of the box. This will also at the same time bring us back to fixing what we call the brain drain, where we have a lot of really foremost thinkers and a lot of very, a lot of foremost thinkers who go abroad to look for job opportunities because they foster innovation because of the income levels. And we should work on why that is happening and bringing that back over here so we can bring those people and those great minds into the country and start reintegrating all of our education and innovation into the nation.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, taking the discussion forward now, let me just build on what Anisha has just said and take that up with you, Ravi, as well. Risk-taking ability. Now, as far as the industry is concerned, the private sector is concerned, what is the level of risk-taking ability do you think that the private sector has? How far can you push the bus, so to speak, to try and take those risks? And how do you enable industry and the private sector to take that risk? What kind of hand-holding is required?
As I have already mentioned, only 2% of medtech industry in India has a turnover of more than 500 CR ultimately, right? So to invest in the R&D and medical device industry is a very capital intensive industry. So they need an hand-holding support in terms of, as in the earlier question I have mentioned, on the enabling infrastructure, enabling policy, subsidies and all. But there are a lot of challenges right now for the industry where, so I would say we have a talent and we have an intent both to grow the industry, but the whole system is actually fragmented. If you will say the innovators, if you will say the customers in terms of the hospitals, in terms of the regulators, they all work in silos at a different level. The startups can build the protocols, but they struggle with the real world adoption, the real world pilots and the clinical adoption. There is a little support for TRL 529, as sir also mentioned that it has been included in the PRIP scheme, right? And even if the product is ready, then where do you going to test it, right? And that too at an affordable cost and in a timely manner. So the testing infrastructure of the country is really very patchy. So I would say we need to look for a collaborative R&D support and R&D grants with different ministries. We need to stop working in silos. One ministry can take up the lead. As sir has mentioned, we have PRIP scheme by the DOP. We have the TRL 629 scheme by the TDB, we have the regulatory authority. What we need is one ministry can take a lead to fund the joint R&D projects, which involves the tech developers, the clinical experts, and the basic researchers. So for example, it is like one project, 3 partners, technology, medicine, and science, to ensure the multidisciplinary accountability and translational milestones. So this is a joint project, and if we get the enabling infrastructure and the policy support, I would definitely say even the sir has said that our medtech industry has already made a good global footprint, and now we are supplying to more than 120 countries. The example has been proven during the COVID-19 time, right? We have supplied vaccines, we have supplied PPE kits and all. At the start, we don't have we have a zero manufacturers of the PPE kit. But then at the COVID time, we have seen how we have supplied to the entire world. But now what happened to those manufacturers, right? After COVID, don't have a business at all, right? So they have to shut down those factories and all. So that's what we need as in manufacturers. We need an enabling systems and continuous support from the government.
Okay.
to stretch our limits.
Points taken, points taken. But how long can the government continue to hold the hand and take this forward? And, at some point in time, the government will also have to decide and say that there's only this much that the government can do. But let me bring you into the picture once again, Awadhesh. Let's talk about, this particular aspect of how we are doing wonderfully well when it comes to generic drugs. And we are world leaders, really, as far as generic drugs are concerned. Let's look ahead and possibly, is there a way that we can incorporate this kind of a model across the board as far as medtech and pharma is concerned? What are some good things possibly that we can take from there?
We have existing ecosystem which is ready, but only thing is pieces have to come together. Some success stories have to be built in. So what the schemes are trying to do is bring forth certain success industry together, which can lead with providing a success story and a dream to other industry operators. Like, we know for sure that we have a very good human resource base. More than 50,000 clinical trials are being undertaken in the country every year. We have more than 4 lakh people with AI training. So we are ready with the basic infrastructure, and we are trying to support and minimize risk, support industry and minimize risk in these areas through various schemes. Like it was also mentioned that DBT is taking industry from their journey, TRL journey from 5 to 9. PRIP is also doing that. ICMR is also through its MedTech Mitra taking the entire journey, the industry through entire journey chain, TRL chain. So they are also supporting clinical trial also in certain cases, depending upon the project. So essentially the entire thing is being coordinated and supported by the government. I think in industry needs certain kind of impetus or certain kind of a success story, which is only likely to come up very soon with so many schemes going on simultaneously. Some success will, and ecosystem in the process is getting built up. It is already there, it is getting coherent. Academia is also getting involved and engaged in this on a large scale. Academia would be the starting point from which basic research would come out. So we are trying to promote industry academia interaction also, engagement also through the PRIP scheme, where we would be incentivizing industry to work with academia, close collaboration with academia. That will further incentivize research and development, and that will help industry and create a proper environment where we can move from generic to research-driven, innovation-driven drugs in medtech also.
Since we're talking about research-driven and innovation-driven, Anisha, let me bring you to the picture once again. What kind of a larger bearing will research and development or innovation in medtech as a whole have on the healthcare sector as a whole, and what is the best way forward?
That's a very good question. I think two of the main things that MedTech is going to do for the industry is working on advanced imaging and monitoring. We will be seeing a lot more sophisticated imaging technologies like MRI and CT scanners that are going to be a lot more precise, that will use smart technology to detect any kind of onset diseases. And especially as we have an aging population and at the same time our current working population are getting more chronic diseases, this is very prevalent. And to piggyback on that, personalized treatment is also going to really help, where we would be able to take a look at genetic profiling and figure out what population is susceptible to or is weak to, and figure out how we can match those and test them to basically get preventative measures out. So we can work towards treating the root cause before it becomes a bigger issue. And I think those two things are going to be a big deal in medtech moving forward.
All right, and Ravi, your concluding remarks on the program. What's the best way forward?
We have a dream to reach $50 billion by 2030. We have a dream to move from just being an assembly hub to becoming a global leader in the medtech. And for that, what we need, as you have rightly said, we need an holistic mission-driven approach where we treat the medtech and pharma innovation as a norm, as national strategic priorities, not just an economic sector. We need to move from import substitution to the export leadership, through the schemes like PRIP, incentivizing the global quality R&D in India to serve both the domestic health needs and the global south. We need to build a national MedTech mission with a clear 10-year roadmap and empowered with the implementation agency. So what everyone has discussed here, actually synergy is the key. PRIP is a strong foundation, is a strong beginning, I would say, but this journey is not about just one ministry or a one manufacturer. It is all about aligning the vision, aligning the will and the action across the academia, government, investors, clinicians, and entrepreneurs. So the bottom line is India must move from being the pharmacy of the world to the lab of the world, which is driven by innovation, backed by the policies and schemes like PRIP, and delivered by the partnerships. That's the way forward, sir.
Wonderful. All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and sharing your views and putting things into perspective for us. Much appreciate your time here on Sansad TV. So what's coming out of this discussion is that all stakeholders need to come on board and work together as one to create a truly enabling ecosystem to push R&D in medtech forward. The government is working on several schemes to try and ensure that the private sector is taken in the right direction and we become a lab of the world. We already are a pharmacy of the world. We are on track to become a lab of the world, and that's something that we need to look forward to going into the future, because what we are seeing right now is a push from the government which is holistic, which is going to work wonders in the near future. That's it in this edition of Viewpoint. This is Frank RAUSAN signing off.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा YouTube चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।